Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to the US once again and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are a relatively new addition to a very well established beer scene. They've built a really strong reputation for themselves over the last few years, done a lot of different styles and introduced new styles into the area as well, which is quite interesting. But we've only just recently got their beers over here in Europe, and this is another one that I picked up at Kiosk over in Copenhagen, who always have a really good selection of quite random American stuff. But the beer itself is one of their very highly rated beers. It's a style of beer that I really enjoy. It's a sub-style of beer as well that I very much enjoy, and also one that you don't get to come across all that often, unfortunately. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Portland in Oregon, a very, very well-known beer city, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Great Notion Brewing. So this particular beer is called Double Stack. It comes in at 11% ABV, and they're describing this one as an Imperial breakfast stout. So basically an Imperial stout with coffee and maple syrup added into it. But one of my favourite beers, of course, one of my kind of cult classic beers would be the Mikkeller Beer Geek Brunch, and you know, this one kind of reminded me of that a little bit when I saw it. So yeah, I love my Imperial coffee stouts. Whenever I see a breakfast stout, I'm usually pretty damn interested in it, and that was what caught my interest with this one when I saw it in Kiosk. But yeah, like I say, Great Notion have built a very good reputation for themselves, particularly when it comes to hazy IPAs and Imperial stouts and things like this. So yeah, this is a brew that I really wanted to check out when the opportunity arose. But yeah, let's crack on with this one and see what it's all about. And one thing we do need to fix on the channel over the next wee while is that we need to review more beers from Oregon, because I know that it's a very, very good beer state, but we just don't come across all that many Oregon beers here in the US, but a number of them are actually available in Japan, so I'll see what I can do about reviewing some of those when I head over there quite soon. But yeah, let's crack on and see what this beer has in store for us, as I said. And big shout out to my friend Joe, of course, who has his own beer tubing channel. You know, you go and check him out. I'll put the link to his channel in the description below. He reviews a lot of very nice Oregon beers. But as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Great Notion Brewing. Very first time I'm reviewing something from this brewery, as I've mentioned to you before, but there's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Just go up to the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture in there, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with many other things, and that of course is being added to all the time. But you can also check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Great Notion Brewing then. So Great Notion Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Portland in Oregon, and the company was founded back in 2015 by Andy Miller, James Dugan and Paul Reiter. So Paul is the CEO of the company, and he comes from a background in like accounts and business, and he actually started his own record company once upon a time. Andy and James, on the other hand, are both involved in the brewing side of things, and they've basically been long-time homebrewers. I think they both had scientific backgrounds, but these three guys were simply neighbours, friends and beer enthusiasts, and they wanted to turn their hobby into their profession, and that's what they've done. So in 2016 they launched Great Notion Brewing in what was formerly the Mash Tun Brew Pub on Alberta Street in Portland, and the name of the brewery is actually a tribute to Ken Casey, who's one of the most famous Oregon authors, and in particular his novel Sometimes a Great Notion. But they started off with a small 7-barrel system, and apparently in the early days they really had some issues getting their beer out to pubs and and to wholesalers and stuff like this, because they were introducing hazy New England IPAs into a region that was really well known for its kind of clear, more bitter West Coast IPAs. But they did manage to persevere, and soon their hazy IPAs started to catch on. But from early on, they had an off-site barrel facility as well for producing wild ales. They aged their wild ales for between 9 and 24 months apparently. They've got a whole variety of different barrels in there as well, from what I understand. But things, went really well for them once they got their beers established a wee bit more. In early 2018, they opened a new facility with a 30-barrel brew kit and restaurant and tap room in northwest Portland, and this now acts as their main production facility. But over the years, they've added further locations in Beaverton, which is also in Portland, Georgetown and Ballard, which are both up in Seattle and Washington State, and they've also got places now in Sacramento and Berkeley down in California. But today, this side of the business, the restaurant and tap room side of things, is taken care of by Ryan O'Connor, who is the Chief Operating Officer. But over the years, they've continued to expand their brewing capacity, they've developed new recipes, and as of March 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 715 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. So, I think that is everything we really need to say about Great Notion Brewing. Very, very prolific brewery, actually. Lots and lots of different styles, both sour beers, imperial stouts, different kinds of IPAs, quite a few lagers in there as well from what I saw. So yeah, if you want to learn more about the different kinds of beers they've done, check out the Untappd playlist. If you want to learn more about the brewery, check out the website, or you can follow them on the usual Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. So that's everything we need to say about the brewery. We can go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the can art on this one. I have to say I do like the kind of Yeti guy, just with these pancakes and his coffee there. Seems to be very, very happy with himself. There you can see it, Great Notion. It says on the back here, double stack, 11% ABV, Imperial Breakfast Stout. It's also got this little bit on the side of the can here. Incidentally, this can, I believe, it's it says 1 pint, 16 fluid ounces, as the Americans would call it, but 1 American pint is 473 millilitres for those of us that use the metric system. The right system, I will point that out, the metric system is a lot better based on water. Not going to get into that too much in this video though, but you can see plain silver top on the can there. And you can also see on the side it says stack 'em high. I think that's pretty cool. But I forget how much I paid for this one, to be honest with you. But the beer will be a bit more expensive in Denmark than it will be in the US. But they had a price listed of $24, I think it was, on the website for this beer. But I'm guessing that will be like a 6-pack or a 4-pack or something like that. Actually, because in America, they sell all their beers in 4s and 6s rather than individual cans like we buy here in Europe. But like we said, 11% Imperial Stout. This one contains coffee beans from Mostra Coffee in San Diego in California, and they're quite interesting. It seems to be a Filipino immigrant owned company, and they like to use coffee beans from the Philippines. The Philippines isn't really known for its coffee. It's more kind of Vietnam actually, and I think Thailand to an extent, that are known for their coffee in Asia. Indonesia too, of course. So to try some Filipino coffee beans should be interesting. And coffee beans, as I've mentioned to you before, are one of my favourite adjuncts to put in beer. When it comes to these, there are lots of different things to consider. The different soil profiles and water profiles in the different parts of the world. There's also the actual bean variety itself, and then there's the way you roast it and treat it. So the mazel, the meters above sea level too, the higher the altitude that you grow coffee beans at, the more likely they are to get different fruity and aromatic flavours. We've had coffee from all over the world in our Imperial Stouts. We've reviewed Brazil, Ecuador, Colombia, Ethiopia, Rwanda, all of these other things. There's some very, very nice coffee beans out there these days. And I don't even drink coffee. I like coffee beans in Imperial Stouts, but I don't drink coffee itself. But like we said, 11% ABV Imperial Stout, this one, with maple syrup and coffee beans. Let's get this guy out. We'll get on with the tasting and see what it's all about. If I can get the thing to pop. There we go. So let's get this beer out into the glass and see what it's all about. And I'm going to say straight away, as soon as you pour this, you get a big, massive, saturating element of maple syrup coming right out of the can at you. So yeah. We've poured a little chunk of this beer out. We've probably still got quite a little bit in the can, right enough. But yeah, it looks pretty nice. So before the head disappears on this one, because that is going to disappear quite quickly, you can see that it poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium tan head. There's some big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass and a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. Like I said, the head is just kind of fading away to be a sort of ring around the edge of the glass. And you can see, like I say, it's a kind of mid-level tan colour that's in this one. Medium-sized bubbles for me. But in terms of what you'd expect appearance-wise from an Imperial Stout, there's nothing particularly surprising about this one. If you shine the light through this beer, it does have a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi Max coloured edge to it, I would say. But yeah, remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or any adjuncts you put in will affect the colour of the beer too. But when it comes to black beers such as Imperial Stouts, it's actually quite hard to influence that, to be honest with you. So yeah, just because of the presence of the black malt. But yeah, it does look pretty much as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this beer, we have to say that. So yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then, and just see what it's all about. Yeah, looks the part, not too much in the way of visible carbonation. It's aroma time. Oh yeah, very straight shooting, absolutely, but it smells absolutely lovely. Yeah, beautiful smelling beer, this one. I'm going to enjoy this, I can tell you that straight away from the aroma. Yeah, so for me, straight away with this beer, it's got everything you would kind of want from a breakfast stout. So let's just take the aroma down and build it up, and then we'll taste the thing. So the backbone of the beer is absolutely a good little bit of a fresh, kind of fresh but roasty toasty, well-fired bread crust. Above that, you're getting, and there's a little touch of woodiness in there. So yeah, roasty, well-fired bread crust, a little bit of woodiness. Good little bit of rye bread and sweet brown bread in this beer too. So yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, sweet rye bread, and you can smell the maple syrup just kind of sitting in with that rye bread as well. You know, you've got a layer of rye bread, I think you've got a layer of kind of more wholemeal brown bread, but yeah, you've got all these maple syrupy notes as well. The thing is, depending on how you smell this beer, if you let it settle, you absolutely get more of the maple syrup. But if you sugar it up a little bit, just like that, you get a lot of, as I say, you get a lot of kind of roasty toasty coffee bean out of this one. But yeah, like I say, well-fired bread crust, a little bit of woodiness, sweet rye bread, wholemeal brown bread, and then above that you get a lot of sweet brown sugar in this one. You can feel some really roasty toasty. You can feel some really roasty toasty caramel in this one. There's a good little bit of sweet treacle and molasses in there as well, straight up sweet caramel. But then obviously the maple syrup is really dominating this one. I really like how all of that goes together, to be honest with you. So yeah, the maple syrup in this beer is absolutely lovely. As I say, I'm looking forward to this. I would say the more and more that I smell of this beer, the more the maple syrup really starts to dominate the aroma, actually. That's a really interesting point about this one. It gets more and more maple syrupy, and this is actually one of the more, it smells like one of the more kind of leathery maple syrups that I've come across, but at the same time it's got a very bright sweetness to it, which I certainly do like as well. So yeah, that's quite interesting, I have to say. Very interesting aroma. But yeah, on the coffee bean side of things, the coffee beans really do start to take a bit of a back seat, like I say. They kind of sit in the, you have to take the aroma in like really quite deeply to get the coffee bean, but from what I'm getting, it's lightly roasted, there's a little bit of earthiness in there, but they strike me as being quite aromatic and quite red fruity. So there's like a little bit of a plummy, raisiny character to the coffee bean. But as I say, quite aromatic at the same time. little touch earthy, very light roast. Yeah, the way that goes together, I think, as well is very, very nice. But yeah, yeah, aroma wise, this is yeah, aroma wise, the coffee bean just adds a lot more depth to the beer too. There's a little bit of chocolatey character to this one, but not overly much. For me, this is more of a kind of brown sugary Imperial Stout. But if I was talking about the chocolate, it's maybe about a 60-ish% cocoa chocolate, quite sweet at the same time, but you do have some darker chocolate elements in there as well. You do get one or two little elements of nuttiness out of the aroma too, which is quite interesting. But yeah, definitely an interesting aroma, this one for sure. On the hoppy side of things, now, as I always say with Imperial Stouts, these are not the most hop-forward kinds of beer. We know this. But I still get quite a little bit of green component out of this one. There's a little bit of earthiness in there. There's a little touch of herbal character. But for me, there's quite an oily sort of floral component. So yeah, a nice kind of oily floral component in there. Some big oily grassy notes as well. And say if you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, and particularly at the front of the nose, that's when you get these floral, grassy elements coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that all that goes together, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me on that sense too. When it comes to the fruity side of things, there's a good little bit of black currant and blackberry. So yeah, for me, it's not too sharp in terms of its fruity notes. There's a little bit of plum in there. There's a wee bit of fig. But like I say, for me, the fruity side of this beer is more blackcurrant and blackberry. Actually, I really like how all of that pieces together. Yeah, aroma wise, very, very nice. Yeah. So yeah, this gets a big. It does get a big thumbs up from me in that sense. I think it goes together really, really nicely. Yeah, lovely, lovely smelling beer, this one. As I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beers before you get stuck into this one. And this one, I would say, the aroma is actually quite straightforward in this one, and it does really start to lean toward the maple syrup the more and more that you smell of it. It starts to get sweeter and sweeter. But it's still absolutely lovely just to sit and take it in for a little bit. So always do that. That's half the experience when it comes to looking at whiskey, sake, craft beer and all these sort of things. But I think it is about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Double Stack, an 11% Imperial Breakfast Stout from Great Ocean Brewing in Portland over in Oregon. So big shout out once again to my good friend Joe Gansel in the north of Oregon. Not often I get to review a beer from his state at the moment, unfortunately, but go and check out his channel. As I say, link is in the video description below. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Yeah. I'm going to say, it's very nice. It's not quite as sweet as I thought it was going to be. From the amount of maple syrup that was coming out of the aroma with this one, I thought this was going to be on the sweet side of the breakfast stout spectrum, but it really isn't. Yeah, this really is very, very nice actually. It just gives you, it's one of these ones, it doesn't do anything surprising, but it gives you everything you would want from the style. So really cannot complain at all. Let's just see if we can get the rest of this in here. So yeah, there you have the full can in the glass. Like we said, 1 American pint is 473 millilitres. But yeah, this is a very, very good beer. So thumbs up to Great Ocean for this one. One of the things as well is, for an 11%er, it's actually, I find this quite easy to drink. And one of the reasons for that, I've always said this, in Scandinavia, we are very spoiled when it comes to Imperial Stouts. I'm yet to find a country that can match, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, or Finland as well for that matter. Their stouts are pretty thick too. I'm struggling to find outside of the Nordic countries. Thinking about some of the Icelandic stuff. It's very difficult to find imperial stouts that match the really thick mouthfeel that you get in the Northern European category, if you like. There's a few things you can do with your imperial stouts. You can double and triple mash them. Double mashing is quite popular amongst the Nordic brewers. You can also do very long wort boils to get the alcohol content and things up as well. But yeah, the flavour profile of this one and the lightness of it, it's just really easy to drink actually. So yeah, for me, lovely, lovely flavour. Big, powerful flavours, but that's the one thing about American Imperial Stouts is I often find them very light in their mouthfeels. And that's just because of my point of reference. Everyone has a different point of reference when it comes to beer, but for me, American Imperial Stouts are quite light in their mouthfeel, generally speaking, compared to the Scandinavian ones that I drink more regularly. But that's not to take anything away from the flavour profile of this beer. This is really, really nicely done. And I can see this one has got a little bit of the kind of pastry stout type vibe to it as well. When it comes to it, the first impression of this one is, yeah, pastry stout, maple syrup, coffee beans and all this sort of thing. So yeah, I do like how this goes together. So yeah, middle third of your palate then. We'll go through this beer and describe the flavour as we always do. Middle third of the palate. You can feel the backbone of the beer is that lovely, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. That forms the backbone of the beer. Toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you start to get you get a little bit of woodiness coming out of the beer. Then above the roasty, well-fired bread crust, above the roasty, well-fired bread crust, you get a little bit, there is a layer of an almost kind of like cakey type quality, and this is where you're getting the kind of pastry, stout sort of phenolic medicine type things coming out of the beer. So yeah, you've got the well-fired bread crust, sort of cakey phenolic type thing. So yeah. So yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice. So yeah, roasty, well-fired bread crust. You have that more, as I say, you've got that more kind of phenolic-y, you've got that kind of cakey layer with all the phenolic stuff in it. Then above that, you start to get the other things going on in the beer. So above that, for the kind of cakey layer for me, you've got a little bit of an almost like sweet rye bready character. Then you've got another layer of a kind of wholemeal, like a more wholemeal brown bready sort of thing. And then you start to get some of the chocolatey elements out of the beer. So for me, the chocolatey element is quite interesting because at the back of that middle third of your palate, you've got a more kind of dry cocoa nibby sort of thing coming out of it. But yeah, you've got that more kind of dry cocoa nibby character in there. And the beer, the interesting thing is, as I've always said, you get more dry and bitter flavours further toward the back of your palate, but as you come further forward, the flavours tend to mellow out a little bit and you get a little bit of a sweeter character out of them. So yeah, at the back of that, at the back of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a really, sort of 80-ish% cocoa chocolate in there, and you've got some of the dry cocoa nibby sort of things. But as you move across and forward on that middle third of your palate, you get up to maybe about 50% cocoa chocolate for me. So it's quite a dark chocolate character that you get out of this one. Then above the chocolatey layer, you have the maple syrup. And the maple syrup for me is quite interesting. You get a little bit more sweetness out of the maple syrup the further into the aftertaste you go. I think that's definitely fair to say. So yeah. Yeah, the maple syrup, as I say, it gives you more and more sweetness the further into the flavour you go with it. But I find this to be like quite a leathery. I do find this to be quite a leathery maple syrup in this one, to be honest with you. But then above the maple syrup kind of layer, you've got the kind of treacle and molasses that's coming directly from the malt. So you've kind of got, it's kind of like the maple syrup sort of makes a bowl almost. Yeah, so yeah, makes a little bit of a bowl in the middle of your, on top of the chocolatey layer, and then the brown sugary notes, the other brown sugary notes kind of sit on top of that. So you've got like a circle in the middle of that bowl, you've got like a little circle in the middle third of your palate. In the dead centre of that, you've got a really highly caramelised treacle molasses sort of thing. That's the alcohol from the beer that's giving you that. But when you go down, you get a little bit more of a slightly brighter caramel, then you've got a leathery brown sugar, and then underneath that, you've got the, as I say, underneath that, you have the maple syrup. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is very, very nice. So yeah, yeah, as I say, I really do like how that I do like how that goes together. Yeah, the middle third of the palate in this beer is really nice. You get a little bit of nuttiness out of this beer the further into the aftertaste you go, but we haven't mentioned the coffee beans yet. You get more and more of the coffee out of this beer the further into the aftertaste you go as well, which is usually the case with an Imperial or any kind of breakfast stout, I should say. So, on that back third of your palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you can feel that little bit of bready build up in there, and it's like a brown bread, but the coffee bean really sits in there for me. So we'll come back to the coffee bean in just a second because I think it makes a bit more sense. But on the back third of the palate, you've got similar layers. I mean, you've got the kind of roasty well-fired bread crust, and there it is, of course, a bit drier. Like I say, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back, sweeter flavours come out further forward. So you've got the roasty well-fired bread crust. You've got a little bit of an almost kind of like crackery layer to the beer, a little bit of a woodiness in there, crackery woodiness. Then you have this kind of cakey phenolic layer, which feels a little bit like a little bit taller, but a bit lighter and airy, and also a wee bit drier. Then you get the kind of rye bready layer, which again is taller, but a little bit more light and airy and dry. Then you've got the wholemeal brown bready sort of thing, which is in there as well. And then yeah, above that, you get the kind of coffee bean notes. So the coffee bean for me is sitting in that border region between middle and back third of your palate, and then it's sort of capping off the top of the back third of your tongue as well. So let's just have a wee look at the coffee bean flavours and examine those. So yeah, the coffee bean flavours for me, they're actually quite really fruity, to be honest with you. So again, there's a light earthiness in there, a very light roast, quite a bit of aromaticity though, and the coffee bean, I get quite a wee bit of like fig and like plum and like maybe black currant or something, blackberry out of it. Like the fruity character from this coffee bean is really interesting, and there's a really interesting relationship going on in this beer between the fruit from the coffee bean and the sort of phenols from the malt base as well. So it's the phenol from the kind of the fact that it's a pastry sour. So yeah, that's a really interesting thing just to pay attention to with this beer. So you between the border of there's something going on between the border between front third and middle third, which of course we'll come to a little bit later, and then the coffee beans, which are sitting at the back of the palate there. So yeah, the coffee beans, like I say, are in that border region between middle and back third, and above the back third of your palate. And those, as I say, those are really interesting. I really like how that goes together. Yeah, it's really the above all of that though, on the back third of the palate, you start to get some of the more yeasty elements out of the beer. So for me, it has got a little bit more of like a rich, rye brown bready character and a bit of honeycomb in there. I always get honeycomb, in the back third of the palate for some reason, but the way, as I say, that it goes together, I think is very, very nice. So yeah, back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller. Then as you come forward into the middle third of the tongue, it just condenses down and squashes together. And squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I really do like how that goes together. The malt, I think we've said everything we need to about the malty and yeasty and adjunct side of this beer as well. These Filipino coffee beans are really interesting. So this is something I need to look into a little bit more. I'd love to go down to the Philippines and see what's going on there in terms of the craft beer scene too. But yeah, let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So as I've said before, Imperial Stouts are not the most hoppy style of beers. The longer you age them, of course, the more the hoppy character is going to drop out. It's up to you how you want to look at it. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, for me with this beer, you do get a little bit of earthiness in the back corners of the palate. As you move further forward, the earthiness does spread forward a little bit. You get a wee touch of herbal character, but as you come along the front, as you come along the sides of the palate towards the front corners of the tongue, you gradually get more and more floral note out of the beer, which I think is quite interesting too. Round the front curve of the palate, there's absolutely a little bit of a lighter grassiness in there. It's quite a wet grassiness as well. So yeah, a little bit of as I say, a little bit of a wetter grassiness, and the hoppy character, the green component for me is overall a little bit more floral, a little bit more grassy and kind of wet in a sense. It's not the most, like I say, Imperial Stouts are not the most hop forward style of beer, but still they go together really, really nicely. And this one is no exception to that. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the green component of this beer. So we'll look a little bit at the front third of your palate. I can feel the booze in this one going to my head a little bit, to be honest with you. And that's kind of strange because it's only 11%. Normally we get this with the Dugas Imperial Stouts, which are like 15, 16. So yeah, crazy stuff. But yeah, let's focus on that front third of the palate then. The border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of that kind of sort of cakey, bready build up in there. And it's got that sort of phenolic note to it, that kind of medicinal Cavonia, cough syrupy type quality. The base of that front third of the palate, you've got a wee bit more you've got the roasty well-fired bread crust in there, you've got a little bit of the cake, and then you've got the more kind of dry savoury thing, and then you get a nice oily bubble there where the fruity juicy esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a little look at those fruity esters then. So yeah, fruity side of the beer is quite nice. Like I say, behind that though, you've got this kind of big phenolic medicinal type thing, but on the back of that front third of your palate, there's a little touch of raisiny sharpness, not too much. So yeah, when you take the beer in, you get a little bit of raisiny sharpness. Underneath that, you've got a good little bit of juicy plum. And I think the juicy plum kind of just sits there on the back half of that front third of your tongue. But then as you move forward into the middle of that front third of your tongue, you're getting more of a kind of figgy note out of the beer. And as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's like black currants in the base and then a juicy black berry sitting on top of it. But like I say, the further into the aftertaste you go, you start to get more and more of that kind of phenolic, medicinal type character out of the beer. So yeah, the fruity side of this one is quite interesting. I think we've summed that up quite nicely, and that is everything we really need to say about the flavour of the beer. But yeah, it gets a wee bit drier and more phenolic and medicinal the further into the aftertaste, generally speaking, that we go. Yeah, I think we can round off this review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer is top end to mid bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a little bit of a kind of, it's a more wet and oily type mouthfeel that this beer has for me. Like I said, compared to some of the Nordic Imperial Stouts that we've had, this one is nowhere near as thick as some of those that we've seen in the past. So yeah, that's why I say it's kind of top end of mid bodied rather than being full bodied for me. But carbonation is very, very smooth. A little bit of oily slickness to the beer as well. In terms of IBUs, it's a little bit hard to place because you have got a good little bit of dryness out of this one from the malt base. You've also got the roastiness of the coffee beans, which is going to contribute to IBU, and you have got the hoppy character. I mean, 60 or 70 IBUs would seem reasonable for me on this one, but always take my IBU counts with a pinch of salt. This is my weakest point of beer reviewing. The malt base, as we said, has a bit of roastiness and dryness to it, some smoothness in there, a bit of savoury character, also a good little bit of sweetness. Everything you would expect from a breakfast stout, to be honest with you. You've got a lovely oily fruitiness to the beer, a nice green component. So yeah, I can really see why this beer has been as highly rated as it is. It's been very, very well done, and I have enjoyed having a little look at this one for you. It's taken a wee bit of time just to get my head around this beer as well, I have to say. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So yeah, this was the double stack and 11% Imperial Breakfast Stout from Great Notion Brewing in Portland in Oregon, a place that I do need to go and visit at some stage, and I certainly need to spend some time there and try a lot of the different breweries. So yeah, we can leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Great Notion Brewing as well. We will need to have a look at one of their hazy IPAs, I think, because they're very well known for those. So we'll see about making that happen in the near future. But as I say, in the meantime, check out my social media, check out theirs. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below, and I will see you guys again very soon. This was a double stack, 11% Imperial Breakfast Stout from Great Notion Brewing in Portland in Oregon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys very, very soon.